Hey, welcome to the Church Explained podcast, a conversation to grow your leadership and build your church. I'm Dave Mckeown.
I'm Nathan Benger.
And we're the hosts of this podcast. And today we're so privileged to have a brilliant guest with us, a guy called Simon Holst, the whole way from Sweden. So welcome, Simon. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on the show and joining in from Sweden.
So we're just going to let people know a little bit about you, Simon, today. You're the lead pastor of a thriving Pentecostal church in Sweden. I chickened out from saying the name. Sorry about that to all our listeners, but I'm sure Simon will help us as we go. So you're married to Caroline and father of Ethan and Ted. And you started preaching at the age of 15, and you've been serving as the pastor since 2009 in the church, and the same church, but doing different roles along the way. You've written a book as well. You are an author and a great title, The World's Best Coach, looking at the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives. And you also run 2 podcasts. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is.
Hey,
we've only got one.
We feel like,
and there's 2 of us.
And there's 2 of us. I reckon we should have 4 by the end of this. So,
so the second one just started, so it might have a short life maybe. So we'll see how long it goes.
We'll see how that operates. So Simon, it is so good to have you here with us today. Can you tell our listeners just the proper pronunciation in Swedish of your church name? That will help us.
That is Skövde Pingst.
Yeah, we hope that helps. Anybody who speaks Swedish, anyone else, it's probably lost on us.
I guess in the in the little comments at the bottom where we put the show notes, we will link their Instagram.
We will,
so people can find you.
Easier, we'll link it and we'll put the church in there and all that sort of stuff.
We are actually in the process of changing name of the church. So perhaps if you come back in a year or so, it might be easier. So
come on.
So do we have a sneak preview of the name, or is that not ready for the listeners yet?
No, it's not ready. It's behind closed doors so far. So
it's in the vault, isn't it? It's in the vault. Hey, so we're going to get ready with some questions.
Yeah.
You've got our first question.
Yeah, well, Simon, why don't you just let us know a little bit about your background and your leadership role?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Christian family, and my mother is a minister. She's been preaching and traveling as an evangelist, Bible teacher for like all of my life. So when I was a kid, I used to go with her on weekends and holidays, and sitting in on the front row and learning a lot since I was just like a toddler or perhaps a few years older. So that's been my background growing up in different churches, and my parents really have affected me a lot. So and they have always like served God and like let the other things come along around that. So that's influenced me when I've decided also to go into ministry and follow that journey. And my leadership role now is as a lead pastor in this church. It's actually Sweden's oldest Pentecostal church.
Wow.
So we have a great history and a lot of legacy, which is sometimes a heavy backpack, but it's also, something you have to work with it and find wins with it. But that's been part of our journey here to really transform this church from a traditional middle-sized church that has been slowly diminishing into reaching the next generation, finding a new voice for a new time. And I've been a big part of that journey the last 15 years, serving as a volunteer leader also for a few years. But so we've just been here in this same church. I met my wife here when I moved here at the age 16.
Wow.
And just been around ever since. So yeah, that's a few parts. You can go any direction, but if you want to fill anything in, so
I think we will pick up one thing that we didn't include in the bio, and maybe Nathan was trying to leave it out, and it is the fact that you are a Man United fan. Is that true?
Yeah, Yeah, probably divided the listeners into 2 or 3 or 15 groups or 20 or whatever Premier League teams there are now. So, but I've been ever since I was like 8-9 years old. We had a Swedish player, Jesper Blomqvist.
Yeah,
he was playing there in the 90s. So he was my idol. So that's when I started to cheering on Man United back in the glory days.
Yeah,
so
it wasn't Freddie Ljungberg at Arsenal then.
Arsenal.
Arsenal.
Yeah, that's like the big. I mean, from that time period, Arsenal was really the arch enemy. So
yeah,
I have more hatred for Arsenal than Liverpool actually. So that's I mean, who knows?
Well, for our listeners today, right beside me, Nathan is an Arsenal fan. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So somehow you guys
we have Fredrik Ljungberg at least. We have something we can.
So you got to work out your differences on the podcast. Maybe that's what we're here for today, is to work out the differences on the podcast. Well, Simon, listen, tell us a little bit about your leadership. We've heard a little bit about your roles. What's helped you grow as a leader? Obviously, you've had the right environment. You've talked about. What else has helped you to grow as a leader?
I think a big thing for me is one of the podcasts, or the longest running podcast I have, is called in English probably like Leaned Forward, and that is really an expression of my leadership attitude, that I want to lead. I want to live leaned forward into all these different leaders, contexts, churches. So throughout my life, ever since I was actually a teenager, I've always pursued like going on trips, taking contact with people that I admire or have been following along, and put in a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort into just coming close to other ministries, under other leaders. And I traveled around the States for 8 weeks. That's when I met one of your previous guests, Stephen Webb.
Yeah,
great guy.
Just visiting different churches, and I went on different mission trips in different parts of the world, and all of that has really like been a drive in me to get to learn more. And I learned the saying at Elevation Church that it kind of frames this. They say that eat the fish and throw the bones. So saying like you can learn from everyone, even the ones you don't agree with, and that's been really my leadership style. I want to learn. And I want to put myself in a position when I can learn from others. And I love what it says in Isaiah chapter 50 verse 4. It says that God wakes my ear every year to hear as a disciple, sort of. That's my paraphrase. But to listen as a disciple, like not as a critic, not as a fan, not as I don't know what else how else we can listen, but listen as a disciple, like I can learn something. So that's a big part of my leadership journey, and growing and learning more.
So those influencers, and for you then, having that hunger, I suppose, is one of the things that's driven you to seek out that help, hasn't it? To go to different places, as you've said, you've invested, you've spent money, and there's something about when we, as some people use this phrase, to have skin in the game, really, that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure. And really to come close to the people, and when you come close to people that you admire, maybe from afar, you really see also like everyone is just a person, a normal guy, a normal girl, and they have their flaws, they have their, and they're pretty much the same as us, but in some way they have taken their ordinary lives and made it into something special. So that's also a big lesson that we're all humans, but God can do incredible things through us pretty ordinary guys. So.
I love that. I love that phrase. Eat the fish and throw away the bones.
Yeah.
And just thinking that's something that we can all begin to apply. And I love the thought that you put yourself in proximity to these leaders. One of the things I'd love to ask you is, what is like one thing you wish you would have avoided as a leader, and why would you wish you avoided that one thing?
I'm a pretty driven leader, and early on, I kind of it's been a big journey for me to become a more inclusive in my leadership, because I have. It's easy for me to come up with an idea, to make a plan, and early on I kind of just laid it on the table. Okay guys, listen, this is what we're going to do, and you're going to do that, and you're going to do that. And maybe it was a great idea, but no one felt ownership, so I stepped on a few toes there early on, and my wife told me early on, like, everyone thinks it's a good idea, but you're not letting anyone in on the decision, on the plans. So that's been a journey for me. And if I could have avoided being like that straightforward at the beginning, I maybe that was something I've worked on.
Yeah. Is there anything practical or anything you've done? Just thinking of anyone, like I'm pretty similar in that regard, in terms of like I'm quite driven, internal processor. So I've got all the answers sorted. So I just need to tell you what to do. Is there anything that like you've done practically, or even in your thinking, that has helped you to go, no, I can't do that, I've got to include others?
Yeah, a big thing is really to learn. I mean, you have all these different personality tests that can really help you. So that's been a big part of that journey. But also just to I mean, oftentimes I have a plan, but I just maybe I just point out, okay, this is the topic, and what do you guys think? What do you think? And just let them go around the table, and maybe a couple of ideas pop up, and a few they just say, sounds cool, and then I can oftentimes lead it towards where I was heading. But the people really, just by being asked, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that? And really including them, even though it's oftentimes like the same product or the same result. And another thing, one guy told me that there are many ways to come to the same goal. I mean, there are many roads, and oftentimes, I see this is the road. It's going to go like this. We're going to take a right and then a left, and then we're there. But I mean, you could really take a left at the beginning and then go straight and then go right and arrive at the same goal. So that's been one thing, not be so fixed at how, the goals. As a leader, you are supposed to give vision and have faith and put up goals, but there are really so many ways to come to that goal. And as I want to point that out, I don't only include others to make them feel included, but it all of the time it becomes a better decision, it becomes a better plan, it becomes a better product when you invite others into the process.
It's great.
Yeah, great answer there, and maybe it just leads on to this next question around what do you do to overcome weaknesses in your life, or do you embrace them? I mean, that's a good question to think through. What do you do to overcome weaknesses, or do you just say, well, it's part of who I am, I'm just going to embrace them?
Yeah, I mean, that can be a big excuse, right? To say like, hey, it's the way I am, take it or leave it. But in some regards, it is like this. I mean, especially in Sweden, we have this. I don't know if there's an equal in English, but it's called Yant the Law, and it's like the law of. You don't think you are anything special, and don't stick out. I mean, you're not better than they are, and all that stuff. That's really a big part of Swedish mentality. Not to like the direct opposite of Americans, sort of.
Yeah.
See Americans here, and you have Swedes here on the other side. So, and that can really affect us as a leader. So. I think in some ways you got to say like, this is who I am, and I'm not gonna just try to be more like what would you say, like more flat, like, but really, yeah. So I guess there's a mix there, but also one thing to overcome our weaknesses is really also to embrace other people, other leaders, and not be intimidated by them or like feel like if they are doing a great job. Like now we are 5 people on my pastor's team here, and I mean, when I hear like one of these other Sundays, like people are saying, oh, that was a wonderful sermon by one of my fellow pastors,
Sure.
And not be intimidated by that, but just see like I am a better leader because I have great leaders around me. So one way to overcome my weaknesses has really been to see the value of the team, and that will make up for my weaknesses, as I can pursue my strengths, but also like understand how my weaknesses look like. And yeah, I don't know, bit of a fluffy answer, but anyhow.
Well, I think one of the things that's coming through, Simon, as you share, is around this idea of including team or valuing team, which I think obviously for you that must be quite high on your agenda, not just, as you say, to use them, but actually to include them purposefully because they make you a better person. So there's something, I think there's something powerful in that we can all learn from, really, isn't there, as leaders. So I want us to think a little bit of, if I can use this phrase, what's your kryptonite and what's your superpower? If you were to think of that phrase, what's your kryptonite, the thing that...
Let me jump in. I thought we were talking to Superman at this point.
We are. Superman Simon. Hey, what's your kryptonite?
Yeah.
What's the thing that weakens you? And what's the thing that you would say is your superpower?
What weakens me is to feel like I can't make a change. Like I'm boxed in. Like okay, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna do it this way, and there's no other options. That is my that just drains me of energy, or perhaps to be in a room where nothing happens and there's absolutely no movement. There's just like everyone is comfortable with status quo, or even worse. That's my that just that would make me itch in every part of every cell of my body. And my superpower, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it already, but I think I have I'm very driven as a leader, and I can make a way and find a way and invent a way, sort of. So I'd say that's to like see the next step and move towards that goal. So that's probably something good.
Yeah, that's a good superpower to have, that, isn't it?
Really good, yeah. And you talked about invention there, and in the start, you mentioned in the background you took a traditional church and reinvented it for a new generation. So I wonder if you'd just dive into maybe some of the steps that you have taken, one, to reinvent yourself, but also to reinvent the church for this generation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the reinventing of myself is really what I've spoken about, and just meeting all these different pastors, people that I look up to, and try to implement things that I learn, things that I say, things that I see, and sometimes learn what not to do by seeing others. So in reinventing the church has been, I mean, that's been, we should probably have a full series on that, but it's really been a 15-year journey, and especially these last 10 years have been quite intense. And I think it all starts out of frustration. I remember so many years when me and my wife and like some friends would just go home from church being frustrated at how things were, and trying to change that frustration into vision. I mean, that's probably a common leadership thing, that real vision comes out of frustration, or out of like something is not right, and then really just rubbing like one step at a time. That's really the big thing, because I mean, you have this as a leader, if you see something bigger, you see another future, and you see this major gap between where you're at and where you want to be, and that gap can be spelled frustration. And the way to overcome that gap isn't really to take like one giant leap. There's no such way, or I haven't seen it at least. It's just like the way to overcome that gap is really like taking 1 meter every like weekend or Sunday or whatever is the benchmark for us as church leaders. Like 1 meter this week, 1 meter next week, 1 meter this week, and really and just seeing, okay, there's so much things left to do, but are we moving? Are we in a progress? And there's been a few times along the way where we said that like if this doesn't come through, that's it. Like we're handing in our towel or whatever you say. It's a Swedish saying. I don't know if it translates to English.
No, that works.
Throwing in your towel.
Throw in the towel.
Yeah.
That's what we say. But then it came through, and okay, there's a lot to do, but hey, where were we 6 months ago? We've seen a lot of progress since then. So, I mean, that's really like the grinding of it. And someone said that to change the culture in an idea-driven organization like what we're into, church. We're not a business. We can't just tell everyone this is what it's going to be. If you don't like it, you'll get fired. But they're there just because they want to be there. And to change the culture of an idea-driven organization takes like 7-8 years or something, whatever they say. And that's really, I can really agree on that. So anyone looking for a quick fix, you better look for something else. But it's really to transform a church. I'd say you'd aim for 10 years, and maybe 5 years along the way you feel like, yes, we have really gotten somewhere, and the next 5 years you will hopefully come through.
I love that thought of taking frustration and then turning it into vision. Because I think for many people, they'll just live in the frustration. But I love that, you know, even for somebody today who's listening, that might just be what they need to hear of, like, you're frustrated, turn that into some vision. Here's what we want to see. I think that's genius.
And just to add to that, as maybe a few listeners are those frustrated people, also celebrate along the journey. Like I said, because all the time, like I'm surrounded with leaders who always see like, but this we got to do this, we got to do this. But hey, we got to celebrate where we're at. So hey, look at where we are now. We are not where we want to be, but we have come a long way since the last 3 months, the last 3 years, and just celebrate everything you can celebrate along the way, because that will really drive that vision to keep on coming over that gap of frustration. So celebrate a lot along the way as well.
Great.
And that's quite powerful in itself, really, isn't it? That idea of celebration, because I think so often as leaders, when we are driven, we're so ready to get to the next thing. You know, we want to push forward, let's get to there. And actually there's something powerful about just taking time, taking space and celebrating what God's doing in our lives here and now, rather than what's yet to come in the future.
Yeah.
So,
and don't just only look at the numbers, because it's so easy to look at the numbers and think like, okay, if the numbers are wrong, we are doing bad. If the numbers are right, we're doing right. But that's not always the case. So I heard this pastor, Earl McLellan, say that he doesn't want numbers like from every weekend. He asks for numbers once a month, because he's this control guy like many of us are. But he says, give me stories every weekend. I want stories every weekend.
I love that.
Because we can have 50 people in the room, and we have like 3 salvations, so we have 4 people coming into connect groups, and that's a great Sunday. Or we have 100 people in the room and no one is doing any engagement into the church. I mean, we can't And that's something I've tried to implement, and especially during this pandemic. Like, I want to hear every single story that you hear. Just a positive comment in the chat, or an email, or a conversation in the foyer, or whatever. I want all the stories, and let's share them, because that really gives a lot of fuel for the whole church.
Yeah,
brilliant. I wonder if we can just explore a little bit further around this reinvention or the transformation of the church that's taken place, because it may be that some leaders are listening, they're frustrated, as you've said, Nathan, where they're at in their church setting. Maybe they're thinking, well, my church is quite traditional, or there's lots of older generations in there. We could just gloss over this, and I know in one sense, as you say, Simon, it could be a whole other podcast or a whole series of podcasts.
Yeah,
but I'm just wondering if
sure.
it's something we can give our listeners today around some of the wins for you then as a leader in your setting. What's been some of the wins over that 15 years you've thought, that's the thing that's really helped us to take those next steps?
I mean, the real change in our church. We were a few people who were working for change several years, and then the real change came when we had a new lead pastor. The old lead pastor that I used to serve under, he was a great guy. He was a generous man, but he was never the one who was going to lead us towards where we wanted to get. So real change has to be led right up front, like from the lead pastor, and also whatever leadership team you have. If you have a board, if you have elders, if you have pastors team who's running the show, or whatever that leadership team, keep that top level leadership team united. Like, as long as they are on board, as long as they are staying together, we can really go through any diversity, because there's gonna be a lot of battles. There's gonna be a lot of conflicts along the way. People losing what they were used to. So that's really been a big thing, to keep the leadership intact. So we've been very conscious, especially when you come from a traditional church background. You have these, we used to have a board of elders. So we were really conscious about making all the decisions there. And then we pushed it okay, we are on board on this, and then we would go and make it happen. But we made sure that every major new step were based in that leadership team, and that we kept the unity in that team. So that's really, as long as that team is unified, you can really go through anything. And then also we started pretty much with our services, because that's what we first took control over, so to speak, and started to work with. And although we had a lot of maybe conflicts under the surface, we always kept Sunday holy, Sunday intact, and Sunday full of faith. And that's really the biggest way, I think, for a church to drive culture is through our Sunday gatherings, whatever they're called. So those were two big steps for us. And then we took all the structure things and all organization things, they came at the end. So the last thing was that we had new, what do you call them? Your founding documents. Bylaws. That was the last thing for our big change, and now we are trying to live in continual change. And now, as I said earlier on, we are on the brink of changing name of the church, as we hope that our journey won't be contained to this specific building in this specific place, but it will be able to bless others. And then it's kind of we are a bit restrained right now by our name that is connected so closely to one place. So now we try to live in that continual growth. And we had this great pastor, Norwegian pastor, who wrote a book that has helped us a lot. And he said that you rather want to have 10% of voluntary change every year than 100% involuntarily transformation every 10th year. Did I come through?
Yes,
trying to translate. But a lot of churches hasn't lived in that 10% change every year, so they need 100% transformation, and that is tough, and that hurts, and that takes a lot of labor. But once you have done that, let's make sure to live in that 10% of voluntary change every year, so we don't end up with the next generation coming and crashing in the door when they think we are too old and too boring or whatever. Yeah.
No, that's really good and really helpful to many people and many people listening. I think some of those things are things that people can take away and just begin to make some changes. I wonder if we could just ask the question around obviously the church scene in Europe, and what does that look like? What does it look like in Sweden for you guys? Obviously off the back and even during this season that we've been in, what does that look like? Is it moving forward? Is it just like kind of surviving in survival mode?
I can't really speak for Europe. I don't have that kind of insight. But as of Sweden, I mean, it's really. I feel like the division is bigger and bigger. We have a lot. We have a few at least good examples of thriving churches, even through the pandemic, that are popping up here and there. But also there are so many churches that are just like, sticking around or starting to diminishing. We just had a new church report, and I mean, like, I don't know, 75% of all the churches are either just standing still or diminishing or like in free fall. And we have like maybe 20% that are actually growing, and we have like 5% that are really growing, or whatever, just quickly like that. So, but it's really, and I think hopefully this can lead to a lot of churches, smaller churches, like connecting their car to a bigger train, so to speak. I think that is what a lot of churches need to do coming out of this pandemic. And hopefully this has, I mean, the pandemic has really just quickened things up, like processes that would have taken 5 years took 1 year, and 1 year took 1 month or whatever. So hopefully that sense of urgency is something that we will see more churches like coming to realization of how things are, and realizing we need to do something now. We can't wait 5 years or 10 years. So it's really big mix, but I'm hopeful, and I think we need large like centers like Antioch churches that are sending and really becoming hubs or centers for that region, because we need thriving churches all around. It can't just be in London and Stockholm or whatever. We need them all around. I mean, there's so many people. Our city has like 55,000 people, and in the 45-minute range we have maybe 250,000. So I mean, and we are the only church in this area that are doing what we are doing. Not like that's the only thing to do, but you get what I mean. So we really need. I believe we really need those regional centers all around, and I'm starting to see that happen in Sweden, and I think that your church is probably an example for that in your area, trying to become a hub and to get those synergy effects, and not trying to struggle on our own too much.
Yeah, great answer to that. And I think just picking up on that, this idea of churches don't need to struggle on their own. I think that's the big thing. And if churches are listening and leaders are listening and they are struggling, like sometimes you've just got to get over yourself and actually go and chat to another church who's a bit further down the road than you are, and maybe even connect with them. As you said, Simon, a sense of having a hub in a city, it can be much stronger for the church, rather than individual smaller churches just struggling along. I think there's something powerful in that as well.
Yeah, definitely,
So listen, we've got a couple more questions before we wrap up today. It's been great to have you on the show. And one of the questions I have for you, and you've touched on it a little bit, but I suppose I want to be a bit nosy, if I can use that phrase in English. And I want to be a bit more specific to find out who has been your sort of inspiration, who's inspired you as a leader and why. Now, we're not looking for you to be general. We want you to be specific. Name names this afternoon. That will help us. And you might lose some friends as well. Sorry about that. But come on, let's find out who's been your inspiration and why. You mentioned your mother. Anyone else?
Yeah, my mother and my father, actually, because my mother is the preacher and my father is like the inventor. He's like this crazy guy who's had like 15 different jobs or whatever. So he's really helped me to get that sense of, hey, you can do whatever you set out to do, sort of. And just being a bit personal, I mean Sweb is actually, like Stephen Webb in Elevation, he's been a great friend of me, and really this he's an annoying guy. I mean, you he's like scratching and he's like pointing out things, and he forces you to grow. So that he's been a great friend, and I'm a good friend also with the lead pastor of Hillsong Sweden, Andreas Nilsson. He like prophesied over me when I was like that back then, when I was like 15, 16 years old, and I've been following along that journey. So those him and also the team around him has been a great source of help for me. I mean, of course, there's so many preachers that you've listened to and all that stuff, I'd probably, those are a few people that just come to my mind as we speak.
Great.
No, it's great. We love to finish with this one final question, which is this: what is the one question that no one is asking you that you wish they would, and what would be your answer to that question?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's kind of hard. But one thing I was thinking about is just like, what's the most important thing in ministry? Like, what's the most important thing? And I mean, we can talk about all these leadership models, and we can talk about all these methods, and you can, the 5 ways to grow your following on social media or whatever. But to me, and that's something that Andreas Nilsson has so often pointed out, like, the most important thing is that you know your calling, like God's calling on your life. Because that's the only thing you can fall back on when the critics start rising, and maybe you question yourself. But really, it's if you know I'm called by God, and to be firm on that. And that's all. That's really, if you set out to plant a church, or you set out to transform a church, whatever, you need to know that you're called to do that. And as long as you know that, hey, they can throw whatever rotten tomatoes at you that they want, but that's really something. And also God's anointing. I mean, I'm this guy. I want to learn everything that I can learn, and I want to be a good leader and all that stuff. But really, if God doesn't add His anointing, His power, we're really just like good communicators or good leadership managers or whatever. So God's calling and God's anointing, I'd say, is the things that sticks out if you want to last in ministry. Coming from a 33-year-old guy, but anyhow.
Hey, 33 is a good age.
Yep. Yeah, very good. Well, it's been great to have Simon on the podcast today. Simon, if people want to kind of follow you, find you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I guess for the English listeners, it might be easiest to find me on Instagram, and that's like at Simon__Holst, HOLST. So that's probably the easiest way. I have a website and all these podcasts, but that's in Swedish, so I don't know if that will make any sense. But yeah, that's a good way to start.
Great. So people get connected with Simon on Instagram. Great. And it's been so good to chat around leadership and church reinvention and all of that. And it's been so good to be together on the Church Explained podcast. Let me just mention the show notes will be available for you. And you can also find more resources at icon.church/open. But that's been it for the Church Explained podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you're consuming this content. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Church Explained podcast.